Okay, we're going to begin our presentation. I'd like to welcome everyone to the interaction of processes and its importance to a successful audit webinar. My name is Joseph Krolikowski and I am the Technical Director of Perry Johnson Registrars. A couple of notes for everybody. All participants are on mute. However, I would like to encourage you to use the question portion of your dashboard. We will absolutely make time for your questions today at the conclusion of the presentation. Our topics for today, we're going to cover some background on the topic of processes. We're going to have a look at the ISO 9001-2008 and ISO 9001-2015 requirements that are rooted here for processes. We're going to explore both what is a process and what is not a process. We're going to incorporate some of the official definitions here and also have a look at intent. And then finally, I think what will be very helpful for our participants today, we're going to have a look at some strategies for meeting this requirement and doing so with minimal changes to your existing documentation. Now, going back to 2014, Perry Johnson Registrars, of course, is accredited to be a certified registrar, and our accreditation bodies have to enforce a number of requirements. And one of the requirements that we were told we were not doing an effective job on was our assessment of client interaction of processes, or IOP documents. Now, the 17021 standard, which is the standard that PJR has to abide by, there is a specific clause that reads, in part, an audit program for the full certification cycle shall be developed to clearly identify the audit activities that are required to demonstrate that the client's management system fulfills the requirements for certification. Now, the critical verbiage here that was not emphasized as heavily in the past was this business of the client's management system. As a certification body, we are expected to be sure that when an audit is done of a ISO 9001 certified organization, that audit reflects the client's management system. And by way of extension, that means that it has to reflect the interaction of processes, or IOP document. So our policy has been to adhere to the IOP and only to the IOP in completing the audit report and number of other things within the audit package. This affects the audit plan, this affects the nonconformances that are written, this affects the auditor's notes, and so forth. Now, if the IOP does not do an effective job of identifying what the processes are in the first place, the auditor has a very difficult time doing their job in terms of showing that your management system has been assessed. So we instructed our auditors some time ago that if you encounter an IOP that is ineffective or not appropriate, to issue a nonconformance against that IOP. Now, in terms of where this requirement comes from in the 9001 standard, let's have a look first at 9001-2008. There are three primary clauses at play here. 4.1a, the organization shall determine the processes needed for the quality management system and their application throughout the organization. 4.1b, the organization shall determine the sequence and interaction of those processes. And then under 4.2.2c, where we have the quality manual requirement, it states that the organization shall establish and maintain a quality manual that includes a description of the interaction between the processes of the quality management system. Now, of course, there is no longer a requirement for a quality manual in the new version of ISO 9001, but there is still a requirement that you identify what your processes are and determine their interaction and sequence. And for that, of course, we turn primarily to 4.4.1, where it states that the organization shall determine the processes needed for the system, very similar requirement there. 4.4.1b, the organization shall determine the sequence and interaction of these processes. And then 4.4.2, which states the organization shall maintain documented information to support the operation of its processes. And that's the clause in which we draw a parallel to saying, okay, how do you demonstrate what your processes are and how they interact? Now, in terms of what is a process, let's look at the official definition for process as presented in ISO 9000. Process is defined as a set of interrelated or interacting activities that use inputs to deliver an intended result. Now, the key aspect of that definition is in the phrase interrelated or interacting activities, plural. Now, this establishes a key aspect of what a process is not. It is not a single step. It's intended to be understood as a series of activities focused on a shared goal. Now, in terms of what we have seen in the past and accepted as process designations, I've put together a list here of what are some of the more common designations: sales, purchasing, production, shipping, design, production control. These are areas that we see many times over called out as these are our processes. Now, it's very important for each of you as organizations to remember that your IOP must reflect what you think your processes are. This is still your quality management system, and it is still up to you to define your processes as you see fit and as you understand them, so long as you are consistent. If this means that your quality management system is made up of 4 core processes, for example, sales, purchasing, production, and support, it's absolutely acceptable for your IOP to reflect as much. Now, in terms of what is not a process, the IOP documents that get rejected most often are the ones that present steps within a single process. So what do we mean by that? What are some examples of that? Well, for example, to say create work order is a process. Issue production schedule is a process. Complete work order is a process. Package product, ship product. Now, these 5 items potentially could all be part of a single process, but they are likely not processes by themselves. An interaction of process document that shows these items as processes in most cases should result in a nonconformance being issued. We are looking for processes, not steps within a process. Now, obviously, we recognize that for a lot of our clients, you took a great deal of care and consideration in developing your IOP. This was not something that was just thrown together. And we also are well aware that for many of our clients, it is disconcerting to be told that a portion of your system that passed audit assessment year after year is now suddenly unacceptable. So part of what we want to do with this presentation is give you some ideas on how you might be able to keep the work that you've done and just tweak it so that it will meet the requirement in a more effective way. And accordingly, we're going to review an example of an interaction of processes, and we're actually going to do a two-part improvement to this, and we'll walk you through these steps. Now we're going to begin with a review of the raw interaction of processes. Now please note that the example we're looking at here is not from any particular PJR client. It was created solely for the purpose of this presentation. So here's our raw IOP, and as you can see here, we have several boxes indicating, we would think, processes. We have a couple of diamond decision boxes here. And some of these items are customer order received. Well, is that a process or is that a step? Sales and work orders issued. Again, same question. Is that a process or is that a step? So again, you can kind of see the concern that we might have in looking at this. Are we to look at an item like this and conclude that there are 12 individual processes within this organization, or is there something else going on here, and this item doesn't quite reflect what the processes are? So our first improvement that we're going to do is we're going to identify the support processes. Now, a lot of the IOPs that we see, they may get rejected because they don't reflect the full measure of what we see occurring within the company. And in most cases, what's missing are what you would call, perhaps, support processes. Now, it's important to note that neither ISO 9000 nor ISO 9001, neither of them draw any particular distinction between classifications of processes. Now, nevertheless, for a lot of companies, this whole concept of key or core processes is a common one. This is a long-term item that we have seen. So because of that, companies make the decision, well, if it's a support process, I don't need to have it on my interaction of process diagram. So those things get left off. Now, what is it we're referring to here? Well, there's a number of things that can be characterized as support activities. Here's a few of them: management review, internal audit, training, corrective action, etc. So let's apply this improvement to our test model here. Okay, we have the same IOP as before, exactly as we saw it earlier, but now we have this box down here in the lower right-hand corner. And this is intended to be a collective. All of the support processes are going to be called out here, and the idea is that with these non-connected arrows, these support processes support the entirety of the core aspects of the system here. All of these steps, all of these items are supported by these items here. That's the kind of the larger idea. Now, the other improvement that we want to apply is, again, let's do a better job of identifying what the processes are. And again, if we want to keep the original IOP as written, the way we can do that is to apply a key. Now, this may work a number of ways. We've seen this done with numbering, with alpha characters, and so forth. Again, this enables the IOP to stay as is, but it serves the system and it serves the audit process by naming those processes that make up the system and that are made up by the steps shown. So let's apply this additional improvement to our test model here. Okay, and in this case we've chosen to do our designation by way of color coding. So now our 12 process steps and our 2 decision boxes are all kind of collected into 6 processes here. We have a sales order entry process made up by these 4 items here. We have a purchasing process made up by these 3 items here. We have a production process. We have a shipping process, which happens to be a single item, and that's okay. we have a quality process, and we have, of course, our support process. Now we've got something. We've made 2 adjustments, and we've accomplished a couple of things. We've kept the content of the IOP exactly as it was before. But what we've accomplished is we now know exactly what the company's processes are. And the IOP is reflecting support processes. This is an IOP that is ready for audit assessment. Now, obviously, there's a number of ways to meet this requirement, and we have seen a wide variety of methods over the years, and we have accepted a wide variety of methods. So we thought we would share some additional examples to give you some other ideas on your strategy for meeting this requirement. Now, in some cases, these are from existing clients. All of these have been used with permission where that is the case. This first model here, we have kind of a top-to-bottom flow, and the idea here is that each of these items is a core process, and again we have our support processes kind of off to one side. So processes are named, and here is our support process. Little bit different approach here. Off to the left we have an item called management related. We would probably take that to mean the support processes. And we have 6 process steps identified over here with an item called quality shown as interacting with all but the quotation step. And we have some further inter-process interaction going on here. So this one is a little busier in terms of the overall interaction, but it absolutely gets the job done in terms of showing what the processes are. This particular item here is typically referred to as a swim lane model. Now here what we have off on the left, we have our process designations, sales, purchasing, production, and support. And what this item does is it shows that sales and purchasing are somewhat independent processes. There's a little bit of interaction here in terms of this step receiving, enabling the sales process to issue the work order. But generally, these 2 items are starting from separate points. They're kind of independently functioning processes, and they both have to occur for production to be initiated. And then, of course, down here we have our support processes, again, with the idea being that these items support these 3 core processes up here on the top. Here's an additional example. We have, in this case, kind of a core set of processes here, a core flow. And you'll note that these process names are unique in some cases. I mean, this is, again, this is intended to be your processes as you understand them. And for this company here, they have service exchange, repair and return, and distribution. These are unique processes to this organization. And again, kind of on the perimeter, we have the other support processes that support the system at large. Now, we obviously want to provide our clients with a value-added audit. We want to make sure that we are meeting applicable requirements. So this requirement that the processes be properly identified, this is a big enough deal. It's been something that the accreditation bodies have compelled us to do. So we're hoping that this presentation will help you better understand what your processes are and be better prepared for audit assessment. I do want to thank everybody for their time today. I do hope the presentation has been helpful. I'm going to go ahead and open the question portion of the dashboard and see if we have any questions today. Okay, it would appear we have no questions. That being the case, I'll wish all of you a good day. Thank you for your attention.